you had worked at the Edge and you come to visit the station. And when I listened to your stuff, my major thing that I was wanting to do was to be as professional, polished, as good for the music, for the station sound, the imaging, the audio processing, because we were at a bit of a handicap, not being 100,000 watts, and our tower being further north, of sounding as loud, as the other DFW stations. So when I listened to your tape, you sounded edgy. You sounded like you were doing the Edge format, and I wanted to have somebody in afternoon drive that could, to me, would be on a par of whoever the Edge was having on as their personalities at that time. I think you tell the story that you thought it didn't go well, and then I call you later.
Well, yeah. So I should probably, just because we're being honest and stuff, tell you that I got laid off from the Edge.
Okay.
I got fired. And what had happened was Clear Channel, had moved from New York to San Antonio. So they were like sticking their hands in all of the cake, because they had these big wigs from New York who were probably, just trying to, just like you, like trying to beef up Power FM. They're just trying to do their jobs well and, make it kind of zing and hum. And at the time, the technology, voice tracking was becoming more and more popular, which, for those of you listening means that it's like pre-recorded. But sometimes even with voice tracking, you still need a board op. You need somebody there to push the buttons and make sure that the tracks play and stuff like that. And so I was doing 6 to 10 p.m. Saturday, Sundays on the Edge. And then I would board op the morning show and Jesse in the afternoons and fill in for Josh Venable whenever he was gone or had shows or doing an event or something like that. And then I also board op for, because they were a cluster, I would do board opping for the Eagle, board opping for Mix 1029, board opping for KZPS. So they were like, all right, we're going to start their first goal. They sent out this memo and they were like, we're going to move to 40% voice tracking because we want to, cut back on having to have the personalities in the studio. We want to try and get the audience used to it and all these reasons they said. And so AO switched me from 6P to 10P to 6A to 10A. And I was just like, bro, why, if we're doing voice tracking, why do I got to be on at 6 o'clock in the morning? Like, this sucks, And he was like, just do it. He's like, my hands are tied. I can't do anything about this. And I was like, this super sucks. I was like, I am not a morning person. I was like, this is not cool. And so they hired all these like fresh out of college interns. Like, I think there was like 9 of them. And they just started, when they did this announcement, they just started running amok. They were eating in the studio. I remember one afternoon, I'm driving, like, it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hear like the 7th song off a Cure CD that I knew was in the studio because somebody had left it there. And I was like, oh my God, like whoever's in there is playing that CD that's sitting there in the studio. And they're playing some random track off of it. So that, all the voice tracks were getting messed up because these guys were just not seasoned. Like, they didn't know, and they're all young and they were eating in the studio and letting people in the building. And so these guys from New York got super mad and they came in and they called an all staff meeting. Like, we had to use the building's conference room because there were so many people there. And like Kid Craddock was there, Jagger and all of his morning crew were there. They were mad that they had to be there to listen. The new hire part-time board op guys who were the ones that were doing all this stuff. And so they made this like 10 commandments of, if you eat in the studio, you will be fired. If you do this, you'll be fired. And one of the things was you have to be there 25 minutes before your shift starts. And I was switched to 6 to 10A and I was late. And so he had to make an example out of me. So...
well,
so I got fired.
There's for the people listening to this, there's a couple of documentaries that sort of describe what radio became, and one of them is called Broadcast FM, and it talks a lot about the consolidation and what happened with the 1996 Communications Act, which essentially allowed radio stations, a few handful of companies, to gobble up and own all of the radio stations all across the country. Whereas before, you could own 10 AMs and 10 FMs. So all the big companies like ABC, CBS, they would want to own stations in the top 10 markets. So you would have a CBS station, you would, like WBAP was an ABC station, Q102 was owned by CBS, and they had an AM and an FM, and that was that you could have 20, and that was the max. And then this, for whatever reason, I don't know, Congress decided, and then we were probably lobbied and bribed, or I don't know what, but this was not good for the industry, and it wasn't good for people, because what happened was the technology was coming in, what you were talking about, the voice tracking, fewer people being able to do entire air shifts for multiple stations, in just a little bit of time. Right. And not have to actually physically handle, CDs or records like we, originally started with. And they paid so much money to buy these stations. And so they were going to cut all these corners. And so like anybody that had been around and had tenure, or so to speak, cost a lot of money, they were going to be eventually, shown the door. And these, like you said, these young kids fresh out of college were going to, fill their places, and until eventually the automation got to be so sophisticated that there didn't need to be anybody. I mean, we lasted longer as an independent ownership, right? Way past secular radio for sure. So you bring that experience, that style, and you fit in really well there. But what I wanted, an afternoon drive, and you joined us in. You give us the exact month. You said it was 2003, right?
Well, so I got fired in February. Yeah, and then I was going to Fellowship Church in Grapevine, and like I had to go on unemployment, and I was really not doing well, and I was really, bummed out that, this happened, and like I couldn't even, like, I was like, okay, fine, then just take me off the edge as an on-air personality and let me just do my board op jobs. But they were like, no, you can't do anything, because we're all part of the same thing. And so I really got sad. I really struggled in that little window from February until I connected with you guys. But I was doing this Bible study at Fellowship Church, and I had this really cool Bible study leader, and he was like, you need to really seek God and what you want to do and what you need to do. And that's kind of how, like, the chocolate fell in the peanut butter, and I've been listening to your station, and, I was like, man, I could really I could really turn it up a notch there. I could be something really good for them. And so I was listening to you on the morning show, and I waited till your last break, and I was in the parking lot out front of the building, and I had my resume and my tape, and I didn't have an appointment. I didn't want to bug you, and didn't want to, I was trying to kind of be cool about it, And so I walk into the office, and Bonnie's sitting there, and I'm just like, can I talk to the guy who's just on the air? And she was like, yeah, I guess. Like, and I like walked around the corner. Like, I think your office was around the corner there. And so you came out, and you were real quiet, and, we walked into the kitchen, and I thought it was weird that we didn't go in your office. And so I'm sitting at the,
here's what I'm going to do while we're talking about this. I'm going to show a picture of how big that office was. Don't you remember once you started with us, that little tiny little closet?
Yeah, it was a closet. He's not lying.
It was, and so that was adjacent to the original Power FM control room, and I think I was going to eat my lunch, because I would have my lunch as soon as I got off the air between 9 and 10 o'clock, or have some sort of a snack. So while I was going to sit and we're going to talk to you about stuff, I thought we'd have a little more elbow room, so to speak. Then because there was barely room for me to sit in the desk and to even have a chair, with all these CDs and a couple of bookcases and a desk and a computer, and so that's the reason why we went to the kitchen. I did that for you.